But when we think of water, what do we normally think of? Maybe a clean, clear glass of drinking water? There's so many things that water is involved in. For example, recreation, work, service, and of course, our meals and food. So I want to talk about 3 items today. I want to talk about first recreation. When we think of recreation, what do we think of? Snow skiing? We think of water skiing? We think of many different things, right? Second, I want to talk about work. How is it involved in our work? Maybe it's we're walking down the street in London on the way to work and it's raining. Maybe it's involved in power production or some other thing that we're involved in. Third, I want to talk about service and how we can use water in service. But I want to go back to my childhood for some examples. So I want to give an example first of recreation. For me, I grew up on a farm. The lifeblood of a farm is water. It keeps the crops alive. It provides for many different living opportunities for animals and others. But for me, the memory that comes to mind is the irrigation ditch leading up to the farm. There's an opportunity there for young kids to go out and to explore. And so the way it would start is somebody would get on the phone and call around, and 2 or 3 families of kids would get together and we'd head down. Now, the call usually meant swimming suit, but don't bring the towel because it would end up muddy, and parents, for some reason, don't like that. And so what would happen is we'd head down there. Now, there was a spot that was perfect. There was a mud slope that would come down in, and if you got the water out and hauled it to the top and poured it down, you could slide right into the river. There was a bog that if you brought the water out and poured it into the footprints of animals that had been there, it got really muddy and gooey. And there's a spot where you could pour water in and it would heat up with the sun over time, and you could lay in it and just really absorb that mud. And so it was a fantastic time. It was something that I really enjoyed, and it would happen week after week, summer after summer, until about my teenage years when it kind of got old and no longer happened. But you'd get down there, you'd have this adventure, and then what would happen is you'd head back up the dirt road. You'd head up the asphalt road to somebody's house, and it was always a debate whose house you went to, because somebody had to get you hosed down so that your parents wouldn't realize the mess you made. It was a great experience. So that, for me, that was recreation. Recreation can be water parks, it can be a whole bunch of things, but that's the memory I have from childhood. Second, work. I loved water as a teenager, and so I became a lifeguard. And in lifeguarding, I really enjoyed working with younger kids. So I took a job where I was able to teach swimming lessons. And what I would do is I would go in and first get the kids comfortable with the water. Just get them in, get them splashing around, get them to enjoy it. Then the second phase came. You had to get their face in the water. You had to blow bubbles. You had to get them in an uncomfortable position where they became comfortable in that water. Then you'd start to teach strokes. You'd start to float on your back. You'd start to swim. You'd start to kick. You'd start to do a lot of those things as they develop. But some of the funnest times were when they got a little older, maybe into middle school, and you got to have competitions. You got to really push them. And one of the things I enjoyed the most was swimming underwater. I could usually get between 50 and 75 yards underwater. And so I would say, if you can beat me, there was some prize. But it never happened, because their lungs would burn. They would get under there, they'd get going as fast as they could, but once you ran out of that oxygen, your lungs would start burning and they would pop up. And it was always fun just to see how far they could make it and to push them and to get them to exercise those abilities they had learned. The third item is service. For me, service was my Eagle Scout project. I spent a lot of time raising funds for trees in a local park. Although raising the funds took quite a bit of time, the digging the holes, meeting with the nursery, putting those trees in was a significant effort. The part that I remember is watering those trees all summer long. Every 2 or 3 days I'd head up to the park and water the dozen or so trees we had planted and spent time on that. So for me, water is a number of different things. It's recreation, it's work, it's service. But as we go into this time of year, I can't help but add water to those blessings that we have. Being thankful for water. It is something that we often take for granted. And I hope you'd remember it as we go through these holiday seasons and I say those things.